Well, hello there, and welcome back to Gamer Galaxy. I'm Adam, and we're going to go through the top 10 games of the PlayStation 2, according to me, not science. Sorry about that. The console sold over 155 million units, which means there's a lot of people playing quite a lot of games. Not all of them were good. Sorry if you was playing any of them. Number 10.
Crazy Taxi!
A wild ride, literally. The PlayStation 2 version of Crazy Taxi is a port of the GameCube version, which, in turn, is a port of the arcade machine game. Whilst each port introduced its own minor niggles, the final PlayStation 2 version remains great fun and is a game you can just pick up and leave off at random, and it's still a huge pile of nostalgic fun to return to at any time. Number 9. Ratchet Clank Deadlocked. Deadlocked, also known as Gladiator in Australia and Europe, is far more on the rails than previous titles, although it's still huge amounts of fun to play through, and whilst the darker tone and slightly more repetitive gameplay than other titles gives it its own unique and grunge setting and appearance, it's a great story and plot to play through. However, you may want to wait a little bit between plays so you've forgotten the tactics and stories, and it makes for one of the best games in the franchise to replay over and over. Number 8. Time Splitters 3. There's a small story to be told here. I used to host and help admin a Time Splitters fan site named Time Splitters Portal. Shout out to the people who used to frequent it, they were all great people. Although, when I agreed to help the owner host the site at no cost, I'd not actually played Time Splitters. I then decided I should probably actually play the game so I can take part in the conversations. And you know what I discovered? One of the best franchises on the PlayStation. For me at least, out of all of them, Time Splitters 3 was by far the most fun, even if previous games did have slightly more interesting maps. With the amazing cast of characters and some great locations to explore in the plot, it's truly a great game. The Portal may have died numerous years ago, but the future for Time Splitters is still a little in the air, with plenty of projects touted but failing to materialise. However, Free Radical Design, the original developers, was recently reborn with the original founders, so perhaps things will finally slot into place here for the many dedicated Time Splitters fans eagerly awaiting its return. Number 7. Okami. Now, excuse me if I have pronounced that wrong, I tried to do it with the Japanese inflections at the start. However, that aside, this game is simply beautiful. One of the final games on the PlayStation 2, it sold quite poorly, possibly because people knew by this time, within about 6 to 9 months, there was going to be the PlayStation 3. However, if this was a factor, people were really missing out. This is a cel-shaded and watercolour world, which I'd guess is best described as an adventure throughout the lands, where you can do battles that are interesting to see played out, or, if you get bored, you can just spring life into plants and trees. If you've not played it before, I totally recommend you dusting out your PlayStation 2 and giving it a whirl. Number 6. Grand Theft Auto Vice City. It may have been released back all the way in 2002, but for many, Vice City still has the best soundtrack of not just Grand Theft Auto, but also in all of gaming. It also introduced a protagonist that is able to talk, which truly proved how much better the PS2 was over the original. Vice City's plot, while straightforward, is fun to play through, and this is the game where Rockstar really started to put character into all of the people you will meet in the world they had created. Number 5. Devil May Cry. Critical acclaim was constant for DMC on release. It looked great, played great, and the story was relatively well thought out, in a time where many console games were very loosely based on plot and all about making the game fun, even if the plot just didn't make sense. DMC follows the tale of Dante, who wants nothing more than to defeat demons, and, after meeting with a lady, isn't that always the case, goes on a journey to take out demon lord named Mundus. The game uses its own engine to create some fantastic cutscenes which progress the interesting story. The game spawned an entire franchise, and the newest of which, DMC 5, was released just 3 years ago. Number 4. Metal Gear Solid 2 Sons of Liberty. Metal Gear 2 follows the same success as its predecessor, with top-notch graphics and attention to detail paid to every aspect of the game, although the game is perhaps slightly ahead of its time in some regards. With the release date of 2001, it accidentally almost revealed the many concepts that have become relevant a decade later in the 2010s. Does the truth actually matter when a fake news article will do? The game investigates these themes around New York City, which is depicted very smartly within the setting. Let's just take a breather here to give some honourable mentions before we crack into the top 3. Number 1 of which is Grand Theft Auto Vice City Stories. This game is a fantastic addition to the PlayStation 2 lineup. It and Liberty City Stories was ported from the PSP to the PlayStation, and whilst Liberty City Stories in itself a great game, it suffers from some of the most horrific FPS drops seen in the PlayStation 2. Thankfully, they managed to weed out whatever was causing this in the port by the time Vice City Stories came out, which makes Vice City Stories simply amazing. If you've not played this before, you really should. The only reason Vice City is in this top 10 rather than Vice City Stories is of the killer soundtrack Vice City has, whilst this just has plot, story, you know, those minor things. Number 2 for the honourable mentions is Burnout 3 Takedown. All of the Burnout games up to this point had been fun in their own right, although the third instalment cranked it up as many notches as it could find, the most fun of which was, as the title suggests, the ability to take down opponent vehicles by hitting them enough. Burnout 3 also received some of the highest acclaim in the franchise, both up to that point and including future games in the franchise. That's it for the honourable mentions in this video. If you do like these videos, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, but for now, let's get straight back into number 3, Kingdom Hearts. What happens when you put a star development team on a Walt Disney collaboration? A freaking great game! Square, soon to become Square Enix, really showed off all the skills in the book here. The game sees Square characters interact smoothly with Disney ones, including Aladdin, Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck. Later Kingdom Hearts games remain top quality to this day, which is a nice change for some of the franchises featured on these lists. Number 2, Grand Theft Auto San Andreas. A great title and also the top selling game for the PlayStation 2. Does this make it the actual best game for the PlayStation 2 though? Not for me. Let's face it, the initial gang related missions are fairly basic and tedious, and OG Locke can suck every lemon in Los Santos at the same time. Possibly the most annoying character in all of Grand Theft Auto, although if you think you know one that's worse, let us know in the comments below. San Andreas and Vice City were amazingly released a year after each other, which is an impressive schedule for them to keep, especially considering the long gap between Grand Theft Auto 5 and, well, still ongoing, really. Other than OG Locke, there are downsides though. A lot of that revolves around Rockstar never really specifying in game a lot of the benefits to be had of doing things, making the game harder than it needs to be at some times. For example, did you know that if you take the time to complete all the firefighter vehicle tasks, you become invulnerable to fire? Or perhaps you didn't know that collecting all the 50 oysters allows you to date previously killed or ditched girlfriends. So I'm off to find some oysters myself. Number 1, Ratchet & Clank. One of the very best platformers combined with action. It features wacky and exotic locations, all meaningfully different and unique to each other. The game has multiple weapons, all slightly wackier and more damaging than the previous one, and the voices fit the characters. There's multiple routes to most places you need to go, so you're not stuck going back and forth to the same places over and over, which is still common with some platformers. Plus, this game started one of the strongest franchises in gaming. Oh, and one really bad film. Well, that's it for another top 10 video. Let us know in the comments if your list is different. It probably will be, let's be honest. And starting next week, we're going to go back to some Let's Fails, or Let's Plays if you prefer them to be called that. And yes, one of them will be Sonic once again. For now though, cheerio!